problem solving in our soft skills series. And like all of our HR trainings, this can support both your work life and your outside work life. No matter what your industry or your role, problem solving is part of your job. Whether the problems you encounter are big or small, you solve problems every day. Learning how to apply problem-solving skills helps not only to enhance productivity, but also helps to cultivate relationships by focusing on shared goals and solutions. Albert Einstein is quoted as saying, "It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer." We will be investigating 5 steps to problem solving. 1, define the problem. 2, brainstorm solutions. 3, make plans and evaluate. 4, implement the plan. And 5, reevaluate to determine how well the plan is working. As we look at each of these steps, consider the problems that you may be facing right now and apply these steps to help you in finding actionable solutions that will make a positive difference for you and your organization. You can't solve a problem if you don't know what it is. The first step in solving any problem should be to define the problem itself. Oftentimes, what we think is a problem is only a symptom of a larger issue. Take time to define the problem clearly, whether it's an interpersonal conflict or a hitch in a supply line. Figuring out what the problem is exactly and clearly defining it means you can move forward with solutions. Solutions that will actually work and get the problem solved, rather than just resolve the symptoms or temporarily stop the chaos. Taking time to define the problem is especially important if emotions are running high or interactions are getting heated. It puts the focus back on shared goals and allows for everyone to be heard. Now it's your turn to apply this to your situation. What current problem or problems are you facing in your workplace? Before immediately moving on to solutions, take the time to define it and then write it down. Once you've defined a problem, you can move on to solutions. It's important not to just choose the first solution that presents itself, nor should you push your own preferred solution to the exclusion of others. Instead, take the time to generate alternative solutions. Ask the others involved what ideas they have for solving the problem. Discuss the ways in which the alternative solutions might play out, problems they might encounter, and how any obstacles can be overcome. Apply active listening and clear communication throughout. Once you've asked others, then discussed, generate alternative solutions with a group and talk about which one or ones you would all like to move forward with. Now it's your turn. Take a moment and jot down 2 alternative solutions to the problem or problems you identified earlier. But don't just stop there with your ideas. Make a list of some colleagues that can weigh in on the solution generating process. Plan to share the defined problem with them and schedule a time to meet and brainstorm solutions together. With your list of alternative solutions generated, it's time to make plans and evaluate them. Give all alternative solutions equally fair treatment. Ask the group to brainstorm potential benefits to each alternative solution or plan. Then work with the group to anticipate potential problems or obstacles with each plan. Based on these discussions, evaluate which plan or plans seem to offer the greatest benefit with the fewest drawbacks. Also consider whether the necessary resources, people, time, materials, or funding are available for each proposed plan. As the plans are evaluated, it will become clear which are entirely unworkable. Narrow the list until the most workable plans are found. Once the most workable plan has been chosen, it's time to implement it. It's important to communicate clearly about how the plan will be implemented. what each person's role will be, and what the goals and expected outcomes are. The other soft skills you are developing, communication and teamwork, are vital here. People must feel as though they are part of the solution if you want them to buy into it. Also provide a timeline for the plan, including the point at which the plan will be re-evaluated. Re-evaluation of the plan is a step that often gets missed. Sometimes what appears to be the most workable plan on paper does not play out when put into action. It is important to take the time to reevaluate the plan once it has been implemented so you can gauge how well it's working. Depending on the results, you may need to make some changes to the plan or implement a new plan altogether. Reevaluation helps to determine whether the original plan has, in fact, been solved. Consider this case study. Tom liked to be known as the fix-it guy. He prided himself on the ability to swoop in and resolve a crisis, and his coworkers appreciated his ability to quickly put an end to chaos or stop a situation from escalating. But he noticed that he seemed to put the same fires out over and over. He could help solve a problem in the short term, but ultimately the same things kept coming up. His colleague in another department, Ashley, asked Tom what his process was for solving problems. Tom couldn't really tell her, but he said he just looked for the most pressing need and took care of it. Ashley suggested that he get his team together and brainstorm a list of their most common problems. They could then identify the underlying issues and create plans to solve them permanently, rather than just managing crisis after crisis as each came up. Tom thought this sounded like a good idea. When he got his team together, Tom realized that many of the crises in the team were caused by a lack of communication and a lack of clear goals. He and his team brainstormed ways to create clearer, more open communication and expectations around goals and roles in their work. Within a few weeks, Tom noticed that he did not have to manage nearly as many crises. Does this sound like you? Are you putting out fires left and right and not sure why problems aren't being solved with permanent solutions? Consider the 5 steps to problem solving that we've talked about in this video. Defining the problem, brainstorming solutions, making plans and evaluating, implementing the plan, and re-evaluating to determine how well the plan is working. How can you apply these steps to your current problem or problems in your workplace, department, or organization? Think about what you've learned. What were your biggest takeaways? Consider sharing what you've learned with a colleague or teammate to actuate the application of this session. This video on problem solving in the workplace was brought to you by HR Office Savers, your independent human resource consulting firm.
I'll stop sharing. So takeaways. Someone share their takeaways from the video. Did you learn anything? You can put it in the chat or turn your videos on and speak up. Let's hear your voices today.
If you don't want to speak now, we're going to ask for participation when Sakia and I come on in a few seconds. So if you want to start, if you're just thinking about your answers.
There's a lot to it. And I just wanted to say real quick how it ties into the autonomy, because it's very important. You had Tom, was like the super guy, the super Mr. Fix-It who came in. But it was important, if he was going to be a leader with his team, he had to give autonomy to the rest of his team members so they know that they had a say, so they wouldn't get so dependent on him. It's great. I mean, it's easy to just let one person do all the work, but then you miss out on the creativity. You miss out on different perspectives. You miss out on out of the box solutions. Maybe Tom had one way to solve it, but maybe Kayla or Hanaja or Dominic have another way to solve it. And if you don't let them in on the solution, you never find out. And sometimes you end up like Tom, just putting out fires instead of getting to the underlying reasons why there's a problem in the first place.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna share my screen. We have a little, so also I know for me, I'm a very visual person. So I know with the video, you heard a lot. So with the visual, you might be able to think of your answers when you see it in front of you. So let me share my screen. Sharing options. How do I do that? Okay, everyone. Sorry, everyone from beginning. Hi, everyone. I'm Hallie. Zakia, are you on here? Make sure.
Yes, I am.
All right. So everyone, for those who don't know me or don't know Miss Zakia, we are two case managers, and we are going to be talking to you about problem solving in the workplace. So going off of that video, talking about just ways to problem solve and just different tips and ways to look at a problem or a situation at work or at school, and looking at how to come up with a response and way to learn just how to break down some situations and look at different alternatives and ways to just solve the problem. So group norms, I just like going over them no matter what. I know you have all been working together for the past few weeks, but we are going to start off with some norms that what's said in this group stays in this group. Please be respectful of everyone else's opinions. I know we're in Zoom, but sometimes, we can still do this where do not speak over each other. And the most important one is the more participation, the better. So the goal of the workshop is just to become familiar with the problem-solving process. And some terms. Does anyone want to read the terms, or does anyone want me to? I tend to talk a lot, so I want to share it with everyone. Or Zakia, or anyone?
Okay. Anytime a difficult situations occur where there is no clear solution. Oh, that's a problem. I'm sorry.
That's fine. It's a
Okay.
Monday. It's fine.
Outcome. What needs to be accomplished by solving the problem? What is the most important thing that needs to happen? And then alternatives is solutions to solving the problem. Sorry, I'm going crazy.
So we're going to look at something called the RAD approach to problem solving, which was not use the exact term in the video you just saw, but pretty much what you just saw. So you want to look, so the first R is recognize the problem for all angles. So what do you want to accomplish? What is the desired outcome? Alternatives that need to be generated, trying to come up with at least 3. Decide on an alternative or 2 that makes the most sense. So the alternatives would just be ways to solve the problem, another term for just problem solving options. And then determine if it was the right one. Do we need to consider another alternative?
And can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I know that we're relating this to the workplace, but in you guys' young life, this can be applied to day-to-day life as well. So as we are in high school or like finishing up high school, we'll come across different problems. But if you apply this same solution to it, it will work out. So it's not just for in the workplace, it's really for overall in life. If we recognize what the problem is, if it's even if it's with family members, family members, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, if the person is worth saving, if we apply this, you'll determine if the person is worth saving, if the relationship's worth saving. So don't think of it as just the workplace and, this work-worthy program will be over soon. This can be applied even during the school year, through your life on. So go ahead, Holly. Sorry to cut you off.
No, thank you. Absolutely. That's a great thing I forgot to add. This is just for life. Problem solving is something we experience every day in all different parts of our lives. And it's important to learn problem solving skills just to get you through, like Zakia said. So here's one example we have. So the situation is Michelle got a new job. On her first week of employment, the boss asked her to work late. Michelle already had plans, but her boss seemed insistent that she was needed to work. Has anyone ever had a job before that this happened to them or something similar? You're lucky. This might come up. This is something that could come up a lot working. I've heard a lot of students in the past talking about, like, if you're working at like a fast food restaurant, you're supposed to be off early. And then they're like, oh, by the way, can you stay till close? And you had something going on. It might not be safe to get home super late. And you all of a sudden are like, well, I just got this job. So what are some things to consider when this situation came up? So this is Michelle's first job. So for anyone here work ready, this is your first job, and you might have found yourself, it's a new experience, right? It's a new way of learning how to communicate and how to interact with your coworkers and also your supervisors, as well as the plans are for Michelle's first date with her new boyfriend, and she wants to make a great first impression. This will be Michelle's first chance to work with the assistant manager who she really wants to work with. Her sister helped her get the job. So that's also always a complicating factor, if you got, set up through somebody. Michelle's boss is a great person, and Michelle really likes him and the job. Michelle's boss is trying to spend more time with his teens at home and wants to leave early to attend one of their games because he's missed most of their season. And Michelle's boss is using the situation to see how seriously committed Michelle is to this job. So thinking, takes a few seconds to read through this, looking at all of the different things to consider. Let's practice looking at some alternatives and ways to problem solve. And I'm going to go back to the slide before this. You can see the RADD words so you can remember what we're looking for. So can anyone tell us what the problem is? You can type in the chat. Absolutely.
Can we also say it? I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
say it out loud.
Oh, I was gonna say that she has work, but her boss asked her to work late, and she kind of has these plans after work, so now it's kind of causing like a conflict between like her plans and then also trying to work late.
Thank you, Caitlin. Absolutely. And
And
so
we see-
what?
And
Yes.
Zanaya wrote in the chat plans, but got called to stay for work late. That is true. Those two.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you. So what is Michelle trying to accomplish? Like, what is her desired outcome that she wants to have happen with this problem?
Well, I'll say, I see Michelle wants to make an impression. There you go, Kate. Make an impression with her boss. And Zanaya says, I'm sure she wants to follow through with her plans, but she doesn't want to let her boss down.
Absolutely. Everyone's correct. Exactly.
Mhm.
That's what's happening. So the desired thing is that her desired outcome would be that she can still go out on her first date with her new boyfriend while also not potentially having some trouble with her boss and not already coming off the first week like she is, prioritizing other things over her job. So alternatives, what are some alternatives that she can do? Or so if we don't use the word alternative, what are some things that Michelle can do to kind of appease both, both her boss and so that she can also do what she wants to do that night? And just, we do not have the answer of what Michelle did. This is just a problem solving exercise. So there's no right or wrong answer. We're not working towards, guessing what Michelle decided to do. We're just deciding some of the options. From the chat, Denali, thank you. Postpone the plans until time when she doesn't have to work. It's a great example and a great alternative. Any other alternatives that people can think of?
I don't know how late she has to stay for work, but maybe she could push the plans till later in the night with her new boyfriend. And then also just stay at work and then be able to go have that date that she wanted.
Yeah, like find a way to be able to still do both. That's great. Absolutely. And do they want to come up with a third one? What's a third thing she can do? What would kind of be the most difficult thing that she could do? Or the most difficult for her?
Cancel her date.
Right, cancel her date. or just straight up tell her boss she has a date, or like, the other side, they're cancel her boyfriend, or say to her boss up front that I had these plans.
Tell her boss, someone wrote in the chat, tell her boss she has plans.
Absolutely. Yes. So we had 4 alternatives here. So what do we think the most likely, if we were Michelle, what would we do? And again, every person is different. So what do you think, if you're in the position, you would probably end up doing?
I like Caitlin's answer, asking to maybe help out, but still have time for my date. So maybe splitting the time.
Absolutely. I'm with you, Zakia and Caitlin. I would do the same thing. I think I would try to do that.
Denaya said, wait until another day because I'd be tired.
Yeah, let's be real. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Cancel plans and work. Absolutely, Melina. Yes. So, right. So we see how with one situation, there are a lot of different alternatives, and what might look like upfront just seems like there's no way to get out of this, right? Like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to have a date with my new boyfriend. I was so excited. My boss needs me to work late. And instead of, what we can do is, if you take a second and step back, think about, okay, I have options here, and take the time to kind of work through them. Namani, thank you. I would change my plans to do them next week. Absolutely. That's a great option. So yeah, and Zakia, so do you want to share?
Yeah.
Should I leave my screen? Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah.
This option?
Well, actually, I didn't. I'm going to read it to you guys because I
Perfect.
didn't. We're
That's
kind of.
okay.
So here's another scenario. You get off on the wrong foot with a new coworker. They ask you for help responding to a customer inquiry, but you refuse to lend a hand because you are working on a tight deadline and don't want to waste your time. There has been tension between you two ever since, and now you need their help on a project, but they're not being very responsive. How do you recover? Do you need me to say that again?
Say it one more time, Zakia.
Okay, or I can quickly email this to me and we can read it because it might be easier to do that. Let me see. I'm going to email it to me and then I'll pull it up.
Perfect.
And then, sorry you guys, we got a little confused this morning. So like, hold on, I'm going to share.
You're doing fine.
All right, I'm a co-host. Get the share screen. All right. Can everybody see it? Okay. So I'll read it again. You get off on the wrong foot with a new coworker. They ask you for help responding to a customer inquiry, but you refuse to lend a hand because you are working on a tight deadline and don't want to waste your time. There has been tension between you two ever since, and now you need their help on a project, but they're not being very responsive. How do you recover? So the first thing that we need to do, who can tell me what's the first thing we need to do if we look back at Holly's, if we look back at problem solving, the steps of problem solving, who can tell me what's the first thing we should do?
I'm going to write in the chat what the RADD stands for, so we can go back and look at that, so you can see. So absolutely. Well, I don't even need to. Amazing. Right. Thank you.
Realize the problem. So from that scenario, who can tell me what the problem was? You need me to put it back up? Can anybody identify the problem?
I would say like it's kind of like kind of two problems in one almost. Like first you got off the wrong foot with your coworker, and now that you kind of need help, they are not as responsive to you because of like that first interaction with them.
Mhm.
When they asked you for help, correct?
Yeah.
So the second thing that so we identified a problem. So the problem that we can say is that when the team needed help, you didn't make yourself available to help the team. Remember, we learned about teamwork last week on here and how important teamwork is. So, and being a team player. So the first problem was stating that she wasn't able because she was trying to meet a deadline. So that will be the first problem that we see.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. Zanaya wrote in the chat, and just while we're still here, saying that she was asked to help and couldn't do it at the time, but needed the same person's help, and they felt some type of way about it. There was no communication.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely.
So the second step, how do we, what are alternatives to her problem now? Is there anything that you think that she can do within herself to help problem solve this? And I'm speaking of the person who didn't help originally. What is 3 things that we think that she can do personally within herself to address fixing this problem moving forward? I'm going to stop sharing so we can say, oh, she can apologize and explain why she didn't help in the first time. That's good, Zanaya.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
Exactly. That's a great point. The ability to acknowledge, when you made a mistake, as when you're at work or in school, if you have a group project, right, and you're relying on different people, the ability to acknowledge when you might not have been the most helpful or you made a mistake is so helpful. And then we'll open up communication. Absolutely.
And AC said apologize as well in the chat.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what else you could do. Alternatives. So that's one alternative. She can apologize. She can ask someone else. Okay, that's alternative.
That's an alternative. How about one more? So even if we don't come up with another one.
Wait, what about trying to communicate?
Communicate.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good one.
AC, or AC said, try to do it by yourself. That's an alternative, definitely.
Yeah. All right, so from the alternatives that we have, determine which one is right. How do we determine in a situation which one is right? What do we think to solve this problem would be the best solution overall to bring this team back together? So you'll have to tap into what we learned last week about teamwork and being a team player. You have to think about everything that you learned up to this point about working in the workplace. What do you think would be the best thing for her to do in this situation so that not just this project, but the ones down the line will benefit? What do you think this person needs to do? And while it's the easiest thing to do, it's the most hardest for most people and most of us to do. Yes.
Yep.
Apologize. Apologize, identify, hey, I really wasn't.
Accountability. Yeah.
Humble yourself, realize, that might not have been the right way to go about it. Identifying to that person, you recognize your mistake. However, let's move past this. And I think that, well, I don't know the outcome, but I think that in working in the workplace, that goes a long way and you can go further than anything. And it also keys back to communication. Right. To the person, because you communicated what was the problem and you apologize, acknowledge where you were wrong at. You guys can move forward as a team. Any questions about that scenario?
That was good. That was really realistic to something that could happen, not just at work, like you said, but in school on a group project.
Yeah.
It happened. Yeah.
I have another one, and I'm going to again email it to myself, and then I'm going to share it with you guys. And I think it's another one that kind of relates to now, or something that is going on in the world that we kind of can think about. Okay, I emailed it to myself now.
And I just wanted to say real quick, and when you do that, what we just said about the apologizing and being humble, then you are part of creating autonomy, fostering a sense of autonomy, because if someone sees you do it, then it says like there's room for people to be restored. There's room for people to make mistakes. And so it's not like if you were to do what like AC, I know that wasn't what you would have done, AC, but one of AC alternatives was do it all yourself. And we know people who have done that. It's like, I'm not going to apologize, I'll just do it myself. And then what you do is you're not creating a sense of autonomy in the workplace, because you're showing people that there's no room to make mistakes or be restored.
I got a
Alright.
question
Yeah.
actually about the last situation.
Mhm.
So I guess the original like person, like she couldn't help because she was working towards a deadline, right? If I'm correct. Wouldn't that be a case of also like kind of setting boundaries for yourself and what you can and can't do?
Mhm.
Yes, Caitlin, that was a great tie together. Yeah, absolutely. Acknowledging your strengths and what weaknesses and setting boundaries for yourself and knowing what you can do and what you can handle.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Gita
So if
has her hand
everybody,
up.
yeah, I have another scenario. If everybody can,
So Tagita has her hand up. I'm sorry.
okay.
Hey, go
I
ahead.
was gonna. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So,
Sorry.
I was gonna say in my workshop we talked about whatchamacallit. We talked about how autonomy can be subjective and how people interpret it differently. And yeah, that's all I want to say.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's true.
absolutely.
And that goes into communication, because if you want, you have to let your part be heard, but then also have empathy to allow other people to share a different perspective.
And we also mentioned, I think Zaki had said it was a newer job or you got off the wrong foot with this coworker. So also if you're at a place and they don't know you as well, you also have to remember that people don't necessarily know your demeanor, how you talk. Some people when they're in a mood, like they might like say stuff, but they're just like in a mood and you don't take it personally. And it's all about learning just a human, just like the dynamic of the personalities of a team or of an office. And it takes time to learn that.
And that goes back to what we learned last week about empathy and body language and assertiveness and just how we carry ourselves in the workplace, and around other people that may not know us personally, on how we could, we're back on this time, like instead of assuming that they know that we're on a deadline, communicating that at that point. Hey, I would love to help you I would love to help you on this project. However, I have to finish this up and maybe I can join you a little later, or can we text about it later or catch up, so that the person didn't feel as though she was just flat out leaving them hanging on the project. Any other feedback and questions about that scenario?
No. All right. Well, the next one.
So I have another one that I think is also, I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So this one is a company that manufactures funeral increasingly finds that their workers speak Spanish fluently, but not English. Management does not know Spanish, and this creates a communication problem. Should management learn Spanish? Should English classes be offered to the workers? Are there other solutions that the company is, wait a minute, I'm sorry, the thing is in there, struggling to contain costs? Some of the solutions should be cost effective. Oh, somebody raised their hand, I think.
Yeah, Takita, we see your hand up.
I was gonna offer something that's not mentioned, probably a compromise, that they offer English classes, but then the company also does PD or trainings to also learn a bit of Spanish, because language is important and that's how people communicate. And if not, hire a translator so we can get through the barriers and have a plan A, B, and C in case one doesn't work out, as opposed to being like, I'm just not doing this.
So let's take a step back, because that's good, but you went to step 2. Let's go to step 1 and then come back to step 2, just because we're going to try to learn this process. So go ahead.
We have to identify the problem first. So what do you guys think the problem is? You can write it in the chat. You need me to put it back up on the screen? I can.
Why don't we put it back on the screen, Zakia, if you don't mind? That way everyone
Okay.
can look back at it.
Okay.
It's the first one.
Caitlin says management doesn't know Spanish and is creating some language barriers. Ayla says they can't communicate.
Absolutely. Yes. So communication is the big problem here. There's just an inability to communicate. Language barriers, yes.
Good job, guys. So now we go into the second was identifying, use it, alternatives.
Alternatives, which
Takita has mentioned. So we utilizing both having English classes and also maybe doing like a PD or doing Spanish language classes. And what is some way, just because the example said it, what's a cost-effective way to do that?
Just have them, maybe have someone from the Spanish speaking community. Yeah, learn, here you go, Louis.
Exactly, you can learn from each other, right? You
have get the thought together and he put it in there. Thank you. That's why we need teamwork.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. They can utilize each other, learn from one another, and utilize the minds in the room instead of always looking outside.
Right.
Definitely.
What's
another alternative?
Another alternative is to like make sure like all the correspondence is in both languages. So like any written correspondence is in Spanish and English.
Absolutely.
So looking at our system, we have identified the problem, which is communication. We have come up with alternatives to that. Now, in this scenario, what do we think is the most realistic thing that the company can do to better the company and the employees as well as the management? So we had someone say, have the literature wrote in English and Spanish. We had someone say they learn from each other to help with the communication. And we had somebody say, did I forget one? Offer classes for those are the three. So out of those three alternatives, what do we think in this problem, to solve this problem? And remember, and with solving a problem, we always are going to have some bumps and we're going to have to come back to it. So I know that, offering classes for English and Spanish for the company, or the company looking to hire a translator within, is always going to be a check-off point somewhere in there. However, what can we do to solve it for the time being and working towards the end goal? Does anybody have anything? Work together, yes.
I was thinking, and it depends on what the job is, but I know it's not perfect, but apps like Google Translate are a good way, just in the moment if you need to communicate that way, everyone's voice can be heard and you just kind of use your phone to type into each other and communicate what you need. That's a very short-term solution, but
I was gonna say also depending on what the job is, but for me, for like my experience, there are some places that they require, like I'm gonna use a boba tea place, like requires like Chinese and English for people who work there. But if one person does just speak just Spanish at the workplace, maybe having someone who probably understands Spanish but just speaks English so they can work together at the same like location. So if someone's having trouble, then they can, like the person who speaks English can just step right in and then talk to the person.
And when I read this one, it made me think of on Friday when we were out there at our work site this weekend, for those of us that came, Derek, Amina, and for you guys that don't know, we helped most of the people that we served on Friday at the community service event were of different cultures and backgrounds and languages. So, and we didn't have a translator out there. So we were like, Derek can tell you, me and Derek worked at the table together. We were like, we worked it out. We worked it together. We just give us the head. We did some of them. We told them just point. to make them feel comfortable. You tell me what you want by pointing, by body language, by head movements. And we got through the event, and it wasn't a bad experience overall. I mean, it was a great experience, but this scenario made me think about that and think of we were problem solving when we were there to, each other, and what could we do better for the next event when we're working with these people. What can we do better, and how could we be sharper on how we help the people? Maybe labels for our food, the names up and the different languages. We had some recipes out there, but that they were only in English, in Spanish, but knowing the population in which we're going to serve so that we're better equipped. So those were some of the problem solvers that we had to work through on Friday. So I just wanted to share that piece.
No, that was great. And you tied in, like, I think one of the most important steps that they said is often forgotten, and that's the evaluation step. So you had the problem, right? And you guys did immediately, did things to problem solve. But then what you're saying is like, now what have we learned from this? And what can we do better the next time? I think that's a key step. Yes, solve the problem, but then take a step back at some point and look and see how we can avoid the problem the next time altogether. So